I'm one of those people that when a storm is coming, goes outside to look at it. From our front porch, I can see a long way over a hayfield and valley. You can look up to the sky and see the thunderheads building and pushing east as the sky grows dark. The wind will pick up as thunder begins to rattle the windows behind me. I'm hardly the first to stand there marveling at the power of a storm. The biblical authors often used thunder to describe the voice of God. I like how Job describes it in the Old Testament. My heart pounds as I think of this. It trembles within me. Listen carefully to the thunder of God's voice as it rolls from his mouth. Job captures what happens over and over when people experience God's presence. They are overcome with awe and a kind of fear which usually forces them to their knees in reverence. There's no disputing this power. The best we can do is draw allusions to it. Thunder. As the Gospels explain how Jesus had come as God in the flesh, you can imagine how hard it was for some to comprehend that possibility. How could that power, the thunder and lightning of God's presence, now be present in him, Jesus, a person from an unimportant town, Nazareth? Many scratched their heads and walked away, unable to reconcile it. Jesus' hometown friends rejected all of his talk about being anointed by the Spirit of the Lord. But some did recognize who Jesus was. The Gospel of Mark tells the story of a nameless woman who had suffered with constant bleeding. She heard about Jesus. She believed enough in spite of her sickness to find him. Mark tells us, she had heard about Jesus, so she came up behind him through the crowd and touched his robe. For she thought to herself, if I could just touch his robe, I will be healed. Immediately, the bleeding stopped, and she could feel in her body that she had been healed of her terrible condition. She knew that Jesus possessed power greater than all the physicians she had consulted for years. She only needed to touch him. His power was great enough that a touch could bring her healing. And in a crowd constantly pressing around Jesus, what difference would it make, one touch from an unrecognized woman reaching out for only his robe? Can you imagine her shock when Jesus immediately stopped, realizing the power had left him? He turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched me?" His disciples said to him, "Look at this crowd pressing around you. How can you ask, 'Who touched me?'" But he kept on looking around to see who had done it. Mark says that the woman admitted what she had done, came and fell at Jesus' feet, and was frightened and trembling. She had felt the power of God, the same power that Job could only describe as roaring thunder. She had felt it with one touch. She had hoped for a miracle, but in touching Jesus, she had touched a power far more than even she had expected. She had been healed, but also exposed. She had caught Jesus' attention and caught a glimpse of his power. As this woman lay trembling at Jesus' feet, trembling at the power she had unleashed, Jesus responded simply, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. Your suffering is over." Jesus is power, the power of God amongst us. But he is also good. What does it mean to have that kind of power for our good? What does it mean for the uncontrollable presence of God's power to now be in a person who calls us daughter, son? We look up and hear this thunder no longer in fear, but in hope. He is our God. Listen.